This week, as I was preparing this sermon, I was reading, as I often do, articles. And I came across an article written by another pastor in the Episcopal Church in Connecticut. She sent out a missive, and she was talking about outrage fatigue. And you know, today I kind of feel the same way. I find myself once again outraged by the events taking place in the news, outraged at how we treat and interact with each other, outraged that we are here again with multiple people injured and it's looking like nothing is ever going to change. You know, today's gospel is about a mentally ill man in the country of Gerasene. And when I envisioned this man, I saw your prototypical crazy person. Homeless, unkempt, many times shackled, usually after interacting with members of the public. And back in Jesus' day, he would have been seen as being, and was, as possessed by demons. There were many ailments which were seen as being caused by demonic possession, which we know today as mental illness. And it seems as though the problems that the cultures have in dealing with their mentally ill have not gone away in the intervening millennia. The gospel story, though, is nuanced. Probably more nuanced for the people of Luke's day than for ours. The name of the demons possessing the man, legion. When we hear that word, we think of a multitude. There were a legion of demons. But in Palestine, they would have seen that as a unit of the Roman army. It would have been real for them. There would have been a legion just down the road. They were the oppressors. So the man was suffering from internal oppression. And to rid the man of the internal oppression, there needed to be some kind of external focal point. Hence the herd of swine. Here too, we're dealing with a different cultural reality. The swine herders were local, then they were probably Jews. That's who Jesus is ministered to. He had no time to teach the Gentiles who his father was. He'd leave that to those who would come after him. No, Jesus was ministering to the descendants of Abraham who didn't eat pork, who couldn't get sustenance from the labor of their brows. These swine were also destined for the market or to feed the legion down the street. But they also were a source of the community's livelihood. And the destruction of the swine herd would have had a significant impact, not just on the herders, but on the community as a whole. So, to save, to restore to health the mentally ill man, meant that there was some consequence to the community in which he lived. Today, as a culture, we have chosen, quite deliberately, not to pony up those resources to treat our brothers and sisters who suffer. And our decision has had terrifying consequences. From Sandy Hook to Orlando, from Virginia Tech to San Bernardino. People who suffer from their own demons have lashed out. And people, not pigs, have died. Many people say that insanity is repeating the same behavior over and over again, expecting different results. And while that is a truism, many of our proverbs, it seems, match that truism, and how we treat or don't treat certain behaviors in our cultures. In this case, how we lack the courage to change how we treat this behavior is what's given me this outrage fatigue. The way we don't deal, or the way we do deal, with the mentally ill in this culture, and how we continue to allow them to have access to weapons which can kill many quickly, gives me outrage fatigue. prayers for the families and communities one more time won't change that behavior. Vigils and marches won't change that behavior. Sermons and speeches won't change the behavior. For something to change, something will have to change. And it may have an impact on the community. Perhaps we fund outreach and mental health programs. Perhaps we make it more difficult for those who are ill to acquire weapons capable of injuring multiple people quickly. But if we want change, there must be change. Because at some point, living in a community means compromising. Today, Jesus showed compassion not only to the man possessed, but to the entities possessing the man. And if you read the story in the context in which it was written, the impact of the healing so disturbed the community that they asked Jesus to leave. In some translations, the people also got angry. And Jesus left because they thought they were going to do something to him. We, though, must look to the healing, or the trying to heal, the sick amongst us. We do this because we are disciples of Christ. Now, I believe personally, God asks all of us, whether or not we be Christians or not, to do this. That's what I believe. But I will say for sure that Jesus asks those of us who follow him to first look to the needs of the marginalized and to be of service to them. Now, this gospel story too contains a powerful message to those whom Jesus has healed or restored. We see this demonic return to sanity. He's recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And Jesus asks him in the end to share what has happened with him within his community, rather than follow Jesus as one of his disciples. Others who Jesus has healed, Mary Magdalene, as we heard last week, had become his disciples after she had been cured of her possession by 7 demons. But Jesus saw how this notorious man would be a powerful witness in his own community about the power of the Spirit to restore and return us to wholeness. We believe, we come to believe, when we hear and see and understand. And one of the most powerful tools in coming to that understanding, one of the most powerful tools in advertising, is the testimonial. Someone we know says this thing or that has helped them. This movie is great, or this restaurant has great food. When we hear that from someone we know, we believe them, and we go check it out. Well, here, this man, who the whole town knew as a crazy man, who lived in the tombs, lived amongst the gravestones, is cured. Look at him now. Who would have thought that possible? How did that happen? Will you tell me that? Jesus told the man to remain behind and bear witness. Now, has God helped you? Has God cured you? Comforted you? Bear witness, like this man surely did. Don't hide in fear, like Elijah did in his cave. Go back about your way. Live your life. Be about the business of your life. And learn from your interaction with God to do things differently, lest you repeat and relapse into some old behaviors. Accept and embrace the change that the grace of God facilitates in your life and help make it real in the lives of others. I believe there is hope in that way of being in the world. And while I tire of how we continue to repeat our mistakes. Personally, and as a culture, I have hope. Because I was once that man living in the wilderness, trapped in the chains of my own behavior and addictions. And God entered my life and healed a wretch like me. Then he said, go out and tell others. You can do that too, in your own way. We can change. We can overcome. Someday. I do believe. All it takes is naming the demons that we have. Just as a start. And then asking God to help us remove them. To restore us to sanity. Christ will do this. He did it for me.